Today, President Biden took steps toward checking off a major campaign promise to America's youngest voters who voted for him overwhelmingly in 2020, announcing that the administration will cancel up to $10,000 in federal student loan debt and up to $20,000 for those who went to college using Pell Grants, all for people earning less than $125,000 a year. The administration also extended the pause on student loan repayments until January. According to the Department of Education, 45 million people have federal student loans, and more than half of them owe less than $20,000. A recent poll asked voters 18 to 34 what they thought about debt cancellation, and 71% said they support wide-scale loan cancellation. That includes 56% of Republicans and 66% of independents. Congressional Republicans, who were more than happy to sign off on a $1.9 trillion tax cut for corporations, were not amused. And like most things these days, legal challenges are expected. But for a lot of the youngs, today was a good day. Joining me now, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, a member of the House Financial Services Committee. And Congresswoman, just if you isolate just black families alone, this is cut too for my producers, black families with loan debt, 30% of them. White families with loan debt, if you just isolate them, 20% do. Hispanic families with loan debt, 14% have this loan debt. It is actually a big deal, particularly for families of color. Do you think that this winds up redounding to the political benefit of Democrats in the fall? And do you think that's why Biden did it?
Democrats win when we deliver and when people can feel the transformative impact, the meaningful impact, the day-to-day impact of our policies and our advocacy on their behalf. And this is transformative. This is an unprecedented step to alleviate the burden that people are feeling to the tune of a $2 trillion crisis. And while I know we've been very focused in your most recent clip there, Joy, about the benefit to young people, this is affecting people from every walk of life. And the fact that 23 million people will have their debt reduced in half, 20 million people will have their debt canceled outright. 1 in 4 Black borrowers, their debt will be gone. So this is transformative. They will feel the impact of this. And this is sound policy in that it is an economic justice issue and a racial justice issue and a gender justice issue, and that 2/3 of this debt is borne by women. And it is good politics. It's good policy and good politics.
Oh, so now we have to get to the counterpoint, because I want you to hear some of what people are saying on the other side. Now, we know that this was a big policy of Bernie Sanders, and it was why a lot of young people liked him. And it was something that President Biden adopted. Nina Turner, who was a big supporter of Bernie Sanders, she tweeted, more should be done. Why stop at 10,000? Why stop at 20? Cancel all student debt. What do you say to people who say it's not enough?
Joy, I have to just acknowledge where we started. When the issue of student debt cancellation was introduced into the national discourse, people really sought to marginalize the issue. And many thought that student debt cancellation was something that would be regressive in impact. There was a harmful and false narrative that would only benefit white graduate students who went to prestigious or affluent institutions. And of course, that is not true. This is about educators who have sleepless nights because they can't meet the monthly minimums and pay for childcare, who took on this debt because they want to educate our babies. This is about 76-year-olds in my district, Joy, on fixed incomes, still paying student loans, who fear that they're going to die, still paying on these loans. At this point, they owe more than they took out. 85% of Black students have no choice but to take out loans, 5 times more likely to default. I was one of those students. That is not abstract for me. I struggled to pay off my loans, and I want better for the next generation. Joy, we know we have to address the root causes when it comes to affordability of higher education. We've got to make that investment in the public good that it is. We need to invest in tuition-free community college. We need to invest in HBCUs, and we need to expand Pell Grants. But this is impactful. This is a bold step in the right direction. It is transformative, and it will be felt.
And I have very little time left, but there is the other argument, too. I mean, Rick Scott, who is worth $259 million and did tweet this from a yacht off the coast of Italy, but also the Washington Post, who said the loan forgiveness decision, they thought it was bad. Widely canceling student debt is regressive. It takes money from the broader tax base, mostly made up of workers who did not go to college, to subsidize education debt for people with valuable degrees. What do you say to people who say that?
Wow. They are really disconnected from the lived experiences and hardship of everyday people. There's a reason why we were able to get organized labor behind this, from AFL-CIO to AFT to NEA, civil rights groups like the NAACP, and many other groups that have worked with us on this, because this is a burdensome issue. This is no handout. Our colleagues across the aisle don't know what a hand up looks like. That's why they didn't want a child tax credit. That's why they didn't want to give life-saving health care to veterans. That's why they didn't want to give stimulus checks to people in the midst of a pandemic or make sure they remain safely housed. Democrats are connected to the pain that everyday people are experiencing, and we are doing something about it, which is why we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, and which is why today this unprecedented step by President Biden, heeding our calls. Joy, this has been 2 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and you will not break my soul.
And quoting Beyonce, too, while she's doing the great Ayanna Pressley. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, let's bring in, for some counterpoint, former Republican Congressman Carlos Curbelo, who is now an MSNBC political analyst. You heard what the Congresswoman had to say. What would be your answer?
Joy, good evening. I certainly understand the perspective. For me, the biggest issue with this decision is that it's going to encourage more young people to get into this system where they are paying colleges and universities a lot more than the product that they're getting back. I mean, this is the fundamental problem here, right? That colleges and universities are charging absurd amounts for these degrees that really aren't worth what they're charging. And the government, all of us, taxpayers, are part of this scheme. And now this is going to create the expectation for a lot of young people who have to decide now, how much should I take out in student loans? Well, maybe this is all going to be forgiven in the future, or maybe a portion of it will be forgiven. So we're really sucking more people into a system that has failed young people and students for quite a few decades now. That's, to me, the biggest problem here.
I don't think I understand your argument, because if what you're saying is that college is very unaffordable based on what you're able to get back in income afterwards, then how can you argue that it's not a good idea to relieve the debt that's been built up? Because it also sounds like you're arguing more young people shouldn't go to college, which also doesn't seem like a pretty strong argument, a very strong argument.
But let me ask you, Joy, where's the accountability here? If the colleges and universities are overcharging, why aren't they refunding these students this money? Why do they get to keep the money? Why do American taxpayers have to subsidize this broken system? And that's the problem with this decision that we're just encouraging. We're further encouraging this system, because now we're going to create an expectation that, hey, it doesn't matter how much you take out in loans and pay X or Y college or university, because in the future, we're just going to forgive $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000. Don't you see the moral hazard there? We're feeding a system. And by the way, the people who get paid at these colleges and universities, they make a good amount of money. They have great pension systems. I mean, why aren't they giving some of this money back? Why are we
I taught at a couple of colleges. I can tell you, college professors are not, and my mother was a college professor. They ain't getting rich doing that. But let me ask you this question. Did you feel the same way about the PPP system? Because under the former president, Donald Trump, billions, trillions of dollars was given away to big corporations, to the airline industry. There was also a huge giveaway to farmers to subsidize them, because the president was concerned about losing the rural vote. We're talking about giving away billions and billions and billions of dollars to big corporations, to big farms, big agriculture. Did you oppose that?
Yeah, that program was deeply flawed. And by the way, the fact that a lot of wealthy families, a lot of retirees who really didn't need it, my parents, for example, they're not wealthy, but they're okay. I mean, they have Social Security. They have, my dad has a pension. He got checks from the government during COVID. They didn't need it.
But didn't he need?
All these programs, Joy, they create more inflation. And by the way, for Democrats who are on a little bit of a win streak here and building some momentum, now they make this decision that is going to create more inflation, more demand for goods, because it's basically
neither of us are economists, and there are sort of people on both sides of that. But I do have to ask you a question, because you are from Florida, and I lived in Florida, so I got to ask you a Florida question. I need to play for you the current governor on a little bit of a different turn here. Here's the current governor of your state. Take a look.
I'm just sick of seeing him. I know he says he's going to retire. Someone needs to grab that little elf and chuck him across the Potomac.
Is that appropriate?
I don't think so, Joy. And I mean, that's the culture that Donald Trump has promoted inside the Republican Party and to some degree in this country. And that's regrettable. You know, that kind of rhetoric. I know why the governor's doing it. He wants to signal to the Trump base that he's with them and that, you know, he's one of them. But I just, that's not my style, never has been. I don't think it's appropriate.
Carlos Curbelo, I love that we can end on a note of agreement. Thank you very much.